In Photoshop, just working with one photo at a time, we're going to do a portrait project. If you don't have a picture of yourself handy or can't send it to yourself, or just for whatever reason, you can open up your photo booth app. It's in your applications on your computer. Double click on that, and that makes it really easy to take a picture of yourself. You can see where I'm talking now to you with my messy hair, and you can see where I've had all kinds of fun for projects taking pictures. It's very easy to drag and drop these onto your desktop so you know where they are. But I already have a photo from my own social media that I'd like to work with. I had to go into my files to find it. I've titled it Mi Umbrella. The way you're going to load that into Photoshop, there's two different ways. You could open Photoshop and then go into Open and then look for the file there, but I find this is a little more direct. I'm going to Control right click on the file, open with Adobe Photoshop. And mine's going to go super fast because I already have it loaded, but it will take a minute to load. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the interface of Photoshop. You've got your canvas here, which is where you're working in. You've got your layers palette over here, and if that's not showing up, I'll show you how to get that back. We've got windows that we don't need right now. Everything starts out as a background layer, and you'll notice there's a little lock here. That means that you can't do anything to it. So I'm going to unlock it, and then it converts it to layer 0. I may lock it later. I might need it actually. Over here we've got our colors, foreground and background for painting application. We've got all kinds of tools over here, but for this project you're really only going to need the move tool and the rectangular selection tool. If you want to get really fancy, you could try the circle tool for this project, but that might be a little harder for what we're about to do. So what I'd like to do is teach you how to make kind of a patchwork portrait like this. And there's a couple different ways we're going to go about that. Before I do anything else, I want to keep this background intact. I want to keep that normal. So I'm going to actually duplicate my layer. And the way I could do that, I could go up to Layer and hit Duplicate Layer. But I like the keyboard shortcuts. To duplicate a layer and its contents, you hit Command J. Why J? I don't know, but now I have a nice copy of there. If for whatever reason this palette is not showing up, you go to the window and down. Anything that is showing up in your interface will have a check mark by it. If it doesn't, it's hidden away somewhere. We'll be using that a lot. So now that I've got this all taken care of, I'm going to turn my background layer off. I'm only keeping this in case I need it to refer back to if I do something to an object that is irrevocably changed. I can also lock this layer if I go to Layer and down to Lock Layers. That way I don't accidentally delete something. So I'm going to hit OK. The other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to isolate just my face. And there's a couple of ways I could do that. I could come in with my eraser tool and just erase everything that isn't my face. I could come in and do a lasso selection of the stuff I want to get rid of. It doesn't have to be perfect because there's different modes of selection. Everything I just selected is actually not selected because I'm on the subtract from selection. So let me show you how this works. I'm going to click Command D to deselect. This button means I have selected something. Anytime you select something, you're going to have these little marching lines around it to let you know that that's the active selection. Say for some reason I wanted to get this black line in there as well. I could come over here to Add Selection, click and drag, and now that's added onto it. Say I didn't want that much of my selection, then I would come into the minus selection. Circle that, and it pops down to that. This last one is a little bit wonky. I don't want you guys to worry about that quite as much. It is the intersect with selection, so I think it's only the bit that overlaps. Yep, that's exactly what it is. So those are available for every single selection tool you have. This is your object selection tool. We'll get into that in another lesson. I really don't want you guys to rely on this one too much because it takes a lot of the computer's memory to think about, and I've noticed sometimes it will crash student computers. So now that we've gotten a little tour of all the selection tools, I'm going to use a different tool called the Quick Selection tool. You'll see this in the Potato Head project, and what it does is it snaps two boundaries, and I'm just clicking and dragging. Now I'm going to have to go back and clean that up where I accidentally took a dent out of my head, but I'm going to go all the way to there, and now I'm going to come back to my minus selection. You can make these bigger or smaller by changing the size. You can also use the left and right bracket keys. We'll get to that in a minute. So I'm just going to come back so it hits my hair and includes that in my picture. And I'm actually going to I'm going to make sure I'm on the correct layer, and I'm going to hit delete. So now I just have my face. Command D to deselect. I need to clean this up a little bit, so I'm going to come in with my eraser. You can have hard brushes, soft brushes. Right now I want a soft brush. Whoops. And I'm just going to smooth that edge out just a little bit, just so it's not quite so cranky. And now I've got a usable portrait to work with.